Vasudevaya Janmadyasya Yato Niviyad Itaratascha Tesva Vigyaswara Tene Brahma Hidaya Adikavaye Muyanti Yatsudayaha Tejo Varimadam Yata Vinimayo Yatratri Sargomish Sada Nirasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dimahi. O my Lord Sri Krishna, son of Vasudeva, O all-pervading personality Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. I meditate upon Lord Sri Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the primeval cause of all causes, of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations. And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion, as one is bewildered by the illusory representations of water seen on fire or land seen on water. Only because of him do the material universes, temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature, appear factual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Sri Krishna, who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode, which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. Dharma Projita Kaitravotcha Paramo Nirmatsanam Satam Vedyam Vastavam Vastu Shivadam Tapa Trayon Mulana Srimad Bhagavate Mahamani Krite Kimva Prayer Ishwaraha Sadyo Hridya Vruditetra Kriti Bihi Sususabhistakshanam. Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated. This Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. Such truth uproots the threefold miseries. This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity, is sufficient in itself for God realization. What is the need of any other scripture? As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart. Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam sukhamukad amrita dravya samyatam pibata bhagavatam rasamalayam muhur aho raska bhuvibhavakaha. O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagvatam, the mature fruit of the desired tree of Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful, although its nectar and juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. Shinvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hridyantak Stuhya Padrani Vidunati Swahit Satam. To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures, or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita, is itself righteous activity. And for one who hears about Krishna, Lord Krishna, who is dwelling in everyone's heart, acts as a best wishing friend and purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him. Nasta presu abhajesu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati utamasloke bhaktir bhavati naistake. In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge. As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam and from the devotees, he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord. Tadarajastamo bhava kamalobhadayaschaye cheta itaranavidam stitvam sattve prasidhati. By development of devotional service, one becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance. And thus material lust and avarice are diminished. Evam prasana manaso Bhagavad Bhakti Yogataha Bhagavad Tattva Vijnanam Bhakta Sangasya Jayate. When these impurities are wiped away, the candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness, becomes enlivened by devotional service, and understands the science of God perfectly. Vidyate Hridaya Grantis Chidyante Sarva Samsaya Siyante Jasikaramani Drista Evat Manishware. Thus, Bhakti Yoga severs the heart not of material affection and enables one to come at once to the stage of Samsayam Samagram, understanding of the Supreme Absolute Truth, Personality of Godhead. Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness can one understand the science of Krishna. Shri Guru Vastika prayers ki jai. The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy, just as the cloud pours water on a forest fire to extinguish it. So the spiritual master delivers the material afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master who is an ocean of auspicious qualities. Chanting the holy name, dancing in ecstasy, singing and playing musical instruments. The spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because he is relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind. Sometimes his hair stands on end. He feels quivering in his body, and tears flow from his eyes like waves. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always engaged in the temple worship of Sri Radha and Krishna. He also engages his disciples in such worship. They dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments, clean their temple, and perform other similar worship of the Lord. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food. Analyzes that which is licked, chewed, drunk, and sucked. When the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavad Prasad, he is satisfied. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal pastimes of Radhika and Madhava, qualities, names, and their qualities, names, and forms. The spiritual master aspires to relish these at every moment. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is very, very eager to hear and very dear because he is expert in assisting the gopis who at different times make different tasteful arrangements for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the groves of Vrindavan. I offer my most humble obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is honored as much as the Supreme Lord because he's the most confidential servitor of the Lord. This is acknowledged in all revealed scriptures and followed by all authorities. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master as a bona fide representative of Sri Hare Krishna. By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement. Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master. At least 3 times a day, I should offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master. Shri Brahma Samhita ki jai. Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchitananda Vigraha Anadiradi Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam Chintamani Prakara Sadma Sukalpa Vriksha Laksha Vritesa Surabhira Vipalyantam Lakshmi Sahasra Satasambhrama Sevyamanam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Vedam Kvarantam Aravinda Dalayataksham Parhavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandarpa Koti Kamaniya Vishesha Sobham Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Alola Chandra Kala Sadvanamalya Vamsi Ratnam Gadam Pranayakeli Kalavilasam Shyamanti Bangalalitani Yata Prakasam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasya Sakalendriya Vrittimanti Pasyanti Panti Kalyanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vigrahasya Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Advaitam Achyutam Anadyam Anantarupam Adyam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Cha Vede Sadurlabham Adurlabham Atma Bhakto Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastakoti Satavatsara Sampragamyo Vayoratapi Manasomuni Pungamanam Sopyasti Yat Prapadasimya Vichintya Tattve Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ekopya Sora Chaitam Jagadanda Kotim Yas Chaktirasti Jagadanda Chayayadanta Andantarasta Paramanu Chayantarastam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yad Bhava Bhavita Diyo Manajasta Taiva Samprapya Rupa Mahima Sanayana Bhusaha Suktaryameva Nigama Pratitaistuvanti Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhavitamis Tabilya Eva Nijarupa Taya Kalabihi Goloka Eva Nivasata Kilatma Bhuto Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena Santak Sadaiva Hitayesu Vilokayanti Yam Shama Sundaram Achintya Gunaswarupam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ramadi Murti Sukala Nimena Tistan Nanavatara Makarod Bhuvane Sukintu Krishna Swayam Samabhavad Paramaha Pumamyo Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yasya Prabha Prabhavato Jagadanda Koti Kutishva Sesha Vasudadi Vibhuti Bhinam Tad Brahma Niskalam Anantam Adishesha Bhutam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Maya Hiyasya Jagadanda Satani Sute Traigunya Tad Vishayaveda Vitayamana Sattva Pralambi Parasatyam Sattvam Pralambi Parasattva Visuddha Sattvam Govindamadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami. Ananda Chinmaya Rasat Mataya Manasu. Ya Praninam Pratifulam Smaratam Upetya. Lila Yatena Bhuvanani Jayat Yajasram. Govindamadi Purisham Tamaham. Devi Mahesa Haridama Satesu Tesu. Te Prabhava Nichaya Vitascha Yena. Govindamadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami. Shristi Stati Pralaya Sadhava Saktireka. Chayeva Yasya Bhuvanani Vibharti Durga. Ichanu Rupam Apyasya Chachesta Tesa. Govindamadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami. Shiram Yata Dadi Vikara Visesa Yoga. Sanjayate Nahitata Pritagasti Hetaho. Paitikarya. Govindamadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami. Dipachad Eva Hitasantaram Abhyupetya. Dipayate Vivita Hetu Samana Dharma. Yastadregeva Hicha Vishnu Taya Vibhati. Govindamadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami. Yakarna Narnava Jale Bhajatisma Yoga. Nidramananta Jagadanda Saroma Kupaha. Adhara Shaktim Avalambya Paramsva Murtim. Govindamadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami. Yasyaika Nisvasita Kala Matavalambya. Jivanti Loma Vilaja Jagadandanata. Vishnu Mahansahi Yasya Kala Vishesha. Govindamadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami. Vasman Yatasma Sakalesa Najesu Tejaha. Swiyam Kiyat Prakatayat Apitadvatatra. Pramaya Esa Jagadanda Vidana Karta. Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami. Yat Pada Palavayugam Vinidaya Kumbha. Dvande Pranama Samayesa Ganadi Raja. Vignam Vihantam Alamasya Jagatrayasya. Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami. Agnir Mahi Gaganamambu Marudisascha. Kalastatatma Manasiti Jagatrayani. Yasmad Bhavanti Vibhavanti Vishanti Yamcha. Govindamadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami. Yachchak Suresa Savita Sakala Grahanam. Raja Samasta Suramurti Rasesa Tejaha. Yasya Gaya Brahmati Sambrita Kala Chakro. Govindamadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami. Dharmota Papa Nichaya Shrutayastapamsi. Brahmadikita Patagavadayascha Jivaha. Yadata Matra Vibhava Prakata Prabhava. Govindamadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami. Yes Twindra Gopa Matavendra Mahosva Karma. Bandhanu Rupa Falabhajana Matanoti. Karmani Nirdahati Kintu Bhakti Bhajan. Govindamadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami. Yam Krodha Kama Sahaja Pranayadi Vitti. Sanchintyatasya Sadrasim Tanamapurete. I'm sorry. Vatsalya Moha Guru Gaurava Sevya Bhavahai Sanchintya Tasya Sadrisam Tanamapurete Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Shriya Kanta Parama Purusha Kalpataravo Druma Bhumish Chintamani Ganamayi Toyam Amritam Kata Ganam Natyam Gamanam Apivam Sipriyasaki Chiranandam Jyotiparam Apitad Aswadyam Apicha Sayatra Shiradibhi Shavati Surabhibhyascha Sumahan Nime Saradakya Vajati Nahi Yatrapi Samaya Bhaje Sweta Dvipam Tamaham Iha Golokam Itiyam Vidantaste Santakshiti Viravachara Katipaye Shishopanishadi Ki Jay Om Purnam Ada Purnamidam Purnat Purnam Mudachate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Visisyate Shivaishamidam Sarvam Jadkinja Jagatyam Jagat Tinatak Tena Bunjitaha Magritaha Krishna Sridhanam Kurvani Vahakarmani Jajiva Chekchatam Samaha Evam Tvayena Nitetastina Karma Lipite Nare Surya Namate Loka Andena Tamasavritaha Tamste Pritya Bigachanti Eki Chatma Hano Janaha Anijadika Manasoja Vyo Nena Devam Apravam Pravam Asat Tad Davato Nyana Teti Tista Tasminapa Matavisya Dadati Tan Ejati Tad Dure Tad Vantike Tad Antarasya Sarvasya Tad Sarvasya Sabayataha Yastu Sarvani Bhutani Atmane Vanupasyati Sarvabhute Sachatmanam Tato Navichigupsate Yasmin Sarvani Bhutani Atmeva Bhut Vijanataha Tatarko Mahakaha Sokai Kadvamanupasyataha Saprayagachukam Akayam Avrinam Asnaviram Sudam Apapavidam Kavirmanisi Paribu Swambu Yata Tat Yatorutan Vyadadach Jasvatipyaha Samabhyaha Andham Tamaha Pravisanti Ye Vidyam Upasyate Tato Bhuyai Vitetamo Yayu Vidyayam Rataha Anyadevhur Vidyaya Anyadahur Vidyaya Iti Susrumadiranam Yenastad Vichachakshire Vidyam cha Yas Tadvedo Bayam Saha Vidyaya Miritum Tidva Vidyayam Ritamasnite Andham Tamaha Pravisanti Ye Sambhutim Upasate Tato Bhuyai Vitetamo Yayu Sambhutam Rataha Anyadevhur Sambhavat Anyadahur Sambhavat Iti Susrumadiranam Yenaschad Vichachakshire Sambhutim cha vinasam cha yastad vedopayam saha vinasena miritum tirtva sambhutam ritamastate Hiranmayana patrena satyasya piyatam bhakam tattvam pusama pavrinu satyadharma hidristaye. Pusanika seyamastraya prajapatya vyuha rasmin samahatejo yate rupam kalyanatamam tate pasyami yo savaso purushaha sohamasmi. Vayuranyanamam ritamate idam basmantam sariram om kratos smarakitam smaro kratos smarakitam smara. Om Agnenaya Supatare Yasman Vishwani Deva Vayunani Vidman Yo Dashmas Juhurana Mino Buyistam Tenama Utim Vidama Om Tat Sat. Srimad Bhagvatam, Canto 2, Chapter 7, verse 27. So we're going to continue in this discussion about the unique qualities of Krishna that differentiates him from everyone else, and his incredible powers that are inconceivable to mundane people, and why we fall down into the material world, and how we become illusioned by Maya, and the two main things by which one can become a devotee and remain as a devotee. So those are the main things we're going to discuss today. Also, what is actually the Avyakta Murti. So, in Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd Canto, 6th chapter, 39th verse, it says, that Supreme Original Personality Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, expanding his plenary portion as Mahavishnu, the first incarnation, meaning first incarnation in the material world, creates this manifested cosmos, but he is unborn. So that's a major difference between the spiritual world and the material world. In the material world, things have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And then that cycle repeats itself again. Whereas in the spiritual world, there's no beginning, there's no middle, there's no end. It's just the eternal present. And its full eternality. So it says that the entire material creation is non-different from the Lord. And still, he's not in the creation. This is explained in Bhagavad Gita 9.4. Maya tatamitam sarvam jagat avyaktam murtina matstani sarvabhutani nachaham tesu avastita. The impersonal conception, the absolute truth, is also a form of the Lord called Avyakta Murti. So it says it's also a form of the Lord called Avyakta Murti. Murti, it says this Avyakta Murti is in this verse 9.4. Jagat Avyakta Murtina. Murti means form, but because his impersonal feature is inexplicable to our limited senses, he is the Avyakta Murti form. In other words, the unseen and an inconceivable form of the Lord. And in that, and it says, and in that inexplicable form of the Lord, the whole creation is resting. Or in other words, the whole creation is the Lord himself, and the creation is also non-different from him. So this is what people don't understand, but devotees begin to understand this. That is, that the Lord is the cause and the effect. He's the original cause of the material creation, and everything in the material creation is made of his own energies, including the jivas. So he's the cause and the effect. This is what confuses people, because in the material conception of life, the cause and the effect are different. But in the spiritual realm and even in the material world, the cause and the effect are the same. That's Krishna. So cause and effect confuses people, right? Sometimes they can't find the cause. Or sometimes they know what the cause is, but they don't see the effect. Like, for example, if someone is murdered and the body has been thrown into the ocean, right? So there's no body. They know the person, and they're not really sure if the person is murdered. All they know is they can't find the person. The person's missing. The family says the person is missing. And they look all over the place. They can't find the body. And there's no communication, and the cell phone is not working anymore, and the car is empty, and they don't go to work. And so they assume that either the person ran away and wants to remain incognito, or they're dead, or they're captive somewhere. But there's no communication at all. So eventually they declare the person dead, but there's no body, right? So the cause is not clear, and the effect is not clear. It's confusing. But sometimes they find a dead body, but they don't know how it got killed, how the person got killed. So they don't know what the cause is. And sometimes they find a dead body, and they have circumstantial evidence that such and such person was the cause of the death, but they don't have a witness. So you see, this cause and effect confuses people. Whereas, actually, Krishna is the cause and the effect of everything. So he doesn't murder anyone, but he does put people into illusion. Now we're going to read why that happens. Why would God, someone can say, well, why would God want to put anybody into illusion? He wants us all come back to Godhead. So why would he do such a thing? Okay, now we're going to hear this. And at the same time, Krishna does nothing. So this is explained also in Bhagavad Gita. So whatever is explained in Bhagavad Gita is more elaborately explained in the Srimad Bhagvatam. So in the Bhagavad Gita, it says, in the 5th chapter, let's see where that is. 5th chapter, 15th verse. It says that, nor does the Supreme Lord assume anyone's sinful or pious activities. Embodied beings, however, are bewildered because of the ignorance which covers their real knowledge. This is a very profound verse. The one before it also says, the embodied spirit, master of the city of his body, does not create activities, nor does he induce people to act, nor does he create the fruits of action. All this is enacted by the modes of material nature. So, there are two, let's say, confusing verses here for mundane people, but not for devotees. 5:14 and 5:15. 14 says, and Prabhupada writes in the purport, the living entity, as will be explained in the 7th chapter, is one of the energies or natures of the Supreme Lord, but is distinct from matter, which is another nature called inferior of the Lord. Somehow the superior nature, the living entity, has been in contact with the material nature since time immemorial. The temporary body, and now we're going to understand why that happened, the real reason why that happened. But you have to go to 2:639 to understand it. But let's continue in the Bhagavad Gita. So it says, the temporary body or material dwelling place which he obtains is the cause of varieties of activities and their resultant reactions. Wait a minute. Are you saying that the living entity is not the cause of his own actions? Yes, that's what it's saying here. Living in such a conditional atmosphere, that's the whole point. We're conditioned. What does it mean, conditioned? That means there's some forces acting on us that are beyond our control. or that are controlling us right now. It may not be beyond our control, otherwise we would never be able to be liberated. But right now it's acting on us. We think we're acting, but actually we're not acting. We're being forced. Living in such a conditional atmosphere, one suffers the results of the activities of the body by identifying himself in ignorance with the body. That's a big statement. It's hard to understand. It's saying that living in such a conditioned atmosphere, in other words, there are forces acting on us that we're not controlling. They're controlling us. One suffers the results of the activities of the body. So this is acting not on the soul, it's acting on the body, right? But because we identify with the body, we suffer by identifying himself in ignorance with the body. So in other words, what's implied here is that suffering is unnecessary. It's something we force on ourselves by becoming conditioned. And we're going to learn why we became conditioned today. It is ignorance acquired from time immemorial that is the cause of bodily suffering and distress. In other words, knowledge would eliminate all this suffering and distress. Like, I'll give you an example. One time, I had a friend, a devotee, and I hadn't seen him for I think 2 weeks. So when I saw him, when I last saw him, he was happy. And when I saw him 2 weeks later, he was really miserable. I said, "What happened?" "Oh, she doesn't love me." I said, "Which she is this?" Because he was married, right? And then he got divorced. So I don't know who he was talking about. So I met this girl recently, Oh, he met a girl recently in the last 2 weeks, right? And now he's crying, because she doesn't love him. I said, "Wait a minute." I said, "What happened?" "Oh, I love her very much." "What? You just met her 2 weeks ago," right? So you see, he was happy before, then he gets involved with some woman, and then she rejects him, and he becomes unhappy. It's all based on the body. It has nothing to do with his soul. You see, it's based on this false attachment, false concept of love, false desire to control her. And because she rejects him, he's miserable. So it has nothing to do with the soul. It has to do only with the body. So it says, it is ignorance acquired from time immemorial that is the cause of bodily suffering and distress. Now, what is the ignorance? The thought that he needs to find this woman, another woman. He finds somebody, and she rejects him, and all of a sudden he went from being happy to being completely miserable. As soon as the living entity becomes aloof from the activities of the body, he becomes free from the reactions as well. So, if, what are some of the activities of the body? It's the eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Well, if you become aloof from these four things, the body suffering ends, or it comes to an end, or it becomes tremendously diminished. He becomes free from the reactions as well. Yeah, why? Because the reactions are acting on him. He got rejected, so that can influence him, like thinking he's loses confidence in himself. He becomes bitter. He becomes afraid. There's this online web page where it says where it's dedicated to men who have a right to have sex with women, and if the women refuse, they have a right to kill them. Did you know that? There's an actual web page like that. And idiots read that, and they become convinced that it should be true, and they go out and they try and have sex with some woman, and when she refuses, they kill her. Did you know that? There's something like that? Yeah, there is. Look up in the internet. Armenian man murders woman due to Armenian man murders woman in Canada because she refused sex. Armenian man murders woman in Canada because she refused sex. Is there anything like that? Anything? Huh? Okay, if we can't find it, we'll... Did you see anything?
Toronto.
What?
Yeah. Toronto van attack.
Yeah.
Is that one?
No, that's not a van attack. It's an Armenian man murders woman who refused sex in Canada.
I think some Zaruhi was not the first. She has been the victim of domestic violence, a crime that is still not recognized in Armenian penal code. It is a form of behavior rooted in the mores of conservative patriarchal societies. Is that what you're referring to?
No. It's something that happened in Canada, and he murdered her because he was going to this webpage which says that men have a right to have sex, and if a woman refuses, they can kill her. Okay, anyway, I'll find it. So you see, all these things are false. It's all based on the body, and it's completely unnecessary, right? As soon as the living entity becomes aloof from the activities of the body, he becomes free from the reactions as well. As long as he is in the city of body, he appears to be master of it, but actually is neither its proprietor nor controller of its actions and reactions. He is simply in the midst of the material ocean, struggling for existence. The waves of the ocean are tossing him, and he has no control over them. His best solution is to get out of the water by transcendental Krishna consciousness. That alone will save him from all turmoil. Okay, and then now the next verse explains how people become entrapped by this ignorance. And it says, nor does the Supreme Lord assume anyone's sinful or pious activities. Embodied beings, however, are bewildered because of the ignorance which covers their real knowledge. So in that verse, it explains that the Lord is Vibhu, or omniscient, but the living entity is Anu, or atomic. Because he's a living soul, he has the capacity to desire by his free will. Such desire is fulfilled only by the omnipotent Lord. In other words, no matter what desire we have, we want to kill someone, we want to be celibate, we want to become a millionaire, we want to become a thief, whatever, you have to have Krishna's help to do it. Such desire is fulfilled only by the omnipotent Lord. And so, when the living entity is bewildered in his desires, the Lord allows him to fulfill those desires. But the Lord is never responsible for the actions and reactions of the particular situation which may be desired. Being in a bewildered condition, therefore, the embodied soul identifies itself with the circumstantial material body and becomes subjected to the temporary misery and happiness of life. This is an amazing explanation. Who understands? Constant companion of the living entity as Paramatma, or the Supersoul, and therefore he can understand the desires of the individual soul, as one can smell the flavor of a flower by being near it. Desire is a subtle form of conditioning for the living entity. That's a big statement. Desire is the subtle form of conditioning for the living entity. The Lord fulfills his desires as he deserves. So based on your previous karma, right? Man proposes and God disposes. The individual is not, therefore, omnipotent in fulfilling his desires. In other words, he's not independent. He's always going to be dependent on the Lord, whether he desires the Lord or whether he desires Maya. He's not independent. He has to have the help of the Lord either way. The Lord, however, can fulfill all desires, and the Lord, being neutral to everyone, does not interfere with the desires of the minute, independent living entities. However, when one desires Krishna, the Lord takes special care and encourages one to desire in such a way that one can attain to him and be eternally happy. This is amazing, right? Now, let's look what's further said in Srimad Bhagvatam 2.639. See, the Bhagavatam is going to explain the same thing, but with more detail. So it says here, the original personality Godhead, Adya, Govinda, expands himself as the Mahavishnu incarnation and rests in the causal ocean which he himself creates. The Brahma Samhita 547 confirms this as follows: Yakar nanaranda vajale bhajati smayoga nidra minanta jagadanda vidana karta adhara saktim avalambya param swamurtim govindam adi purisham tamaham bhajami. Lord Brahmaji says in his Brahma Samhita, I worship the primeval Lord Govinda, who lies down in the causal ocean in his plenary portion as Mahavishnu, with all the universes generating from the pores of hair on his transcendental body, and who accepts the mystic slumber of eternity. So now it's going to get really esoterical now. It's going to become really inconceivable what we're going to read. So it says that there's something called the causal ocean. Now, what is the causal ocean? So this Mahavishnu is the first incarnation in the creation, meaning the material world. The spiritual world doesn't have any creation. It's eternally existing. But the material world is created at some time. And from him, all the universes are generated and all material manifestations are produced, one after another. The causal ocean is created by the Lord as the Mahatattva. Wow. The causal ocean is created by the Lord as the Mahatattva, as a cloud in the spiritual sky, and is only only a part of his different manifestations. The spiritual sky is an expansion of his personal rays, meaning the Brahmajyoti, and he is the Mahatattva cloud also. This is where it becomes inconceivable. He's also this Mahatattva cloud. He lies down and generates the universes by his breathing, and again by entering into each universe as Garbhodaksha Vishnu. He creates Brahma, Shiva, and many other demigods for maintenance of the universe, and again absorbs the whole thing into his person, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 9.7. Sarvabhutani konte prakritim yanti mamikam kalpasaye punaktani kalpado risrajam yaham. O son of Kunti, when the kalpa, or the duration of the entire life of Brahma, is ended, then all the created manifestations enter into my prakriti, or energy, and again when I desire, the same creation takes place by my personal energy. The conclusion is that these are all but displays of the Lord's inconceivable personal energies, of which no one can have any full information. This point we have already discussed. Okay, so this explains causality. There's such a thing as the causal ocean, which is this Mahatattva, but it's compared to a causal ocean. And the Lord reclines, and when he exhales, universes come out of his body, and the whole universe is 4 billion miles in diameter, right? So it's huge, right? Just imagine how big Mahavishnu is. And then when he inhales, they're all absorbed back into his body and annihilated. And then there's a long period, as long as the creation took place. And then again he exhales. This is all happening in one inhalation and exhalation, right? So this is inconceivable for living entities. Right? So now we're going to hear why all these things happen. In Srimad Bhagvatam 2.9.1, Sri Sukadeva Uvacha, Atma Mayam Rite Rajan. Sri Sukadeva Goswami said, O king, unless one is influenced by the energy of the Supreme Personality Godhead, there's no meaning to the relationship of the pure soul in pure consciousness with the material body. That relationship is just like a dreamer's seeing his own body working. This is extremely subtle verse, and let's read and see what it says. Maharaj Parikshit's question. So we're back in the second canto. We haven't come to this chapter yet. It's the next chapter. We're in chapter 8 now. It said, Maharaj Parikshit's question as to how a living entity began his material life, although he is apart from the material body and mind, is perfectly answered. See? So, I mean, these questions that Maharaj Parikshit is asking are amazing questions. He wants to know, how did we get entrapped in the material world? How did this happen when we're transcendental to it? The spirit soul is distinct from the material conception of his life. Okay, then there's such a thing called the material conception, right? This is the thing that gets us entrapped. And how we develop it now is going to be explained. But he is absorbed in such a material conception because of being influenced by the external energy of the Lord, called Atma Maya. This has already been explained in the first canto in connection with Vyasadeva's realization of the Supreme Lord and his external energy. The external energy is controlled by the Lord, and the living entities are controlled by the external energy, by the will of the Lord. Therefore, so in other words, everything depends on the Lord. You want to be influenced by the external energy? That depends on the Lord. You want to be influenced by the internal energy? That's determined by the Lord, right? So everything depends on what our desires are, because we have limited freedom of free will. This has already been okay. The external energy is controlled by the Lord, and the living entities are controlled by the external energy, by the will of the Lord. Therefore, although the living entity is purely conscious in his pure state, he is subordinate to the will of the Lord in being influenced by the external energy of the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita 15:15, also the same thing is confirmed. See, now we're getting a deeper understanding of all these verses of Bhagavad Gita. He's saying the same thing is confirmed. And how is that? Sarvashachaham hridhi sanavisto matak smriti yanam apohanam cha vidaishta sarve aham eva vedyo vedanta krit vedavet eva chaham. So the first two lines are fundamental. Sarvashachaham hridhi sanavisto. Krishna says, I am in the heart of all living entities. And from me come knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. There it is. Forgetfulness, right? This is, everybody in this material world has forgotten Krishna. That's why we're here. Now, how did this happen? Now he's going to explain it. Also, the same thing is confirmed. The Lord is present within the heart of every living entity, and all the living entities' consciousness and forgetfulness are influenced by the Lord. Now, the next question automatically made will be why the Lord influences the living entity to such consciousness and forgetfulness. This is the key question, because it cannot happen without the Lord. So why would he do this? The answer is that the Lord clearly wishes that every living entity be in his pure consciousness as a part and parcel of the Lord, and thus be engaged in the loving service of the Lord as he is constitutionally made. But because the living entity is partially independent also, he may not be willing to serve the Lord, but may try to become as independent as the Lord is. All the non-devotee living entities are desirous of becoming equally as powerful as the Lord, although they are not fit to become so. The living entities are illusioned by the will of the Lord because they wanted to become like him, like a person who thinks of becoming a king without possessing the necessary qualification. When the living entity desires to become the Lord himself, he is put in a condition of dreaming that he is a king. Therefore, the first sinful will of the living entity is to become the Lord, and the consequent will of the Lord is that the living entity forget his factual life and thus dream of the land of utopia, where he may become one like the Lord. The child cries to have the moon from the mother, and the mother gives the child a mirror to satisfy the crying and disturbing child with the reflection of the moon. So the child sees the moon reflected in the mirror, and he thinks now he's got the moon. You see, the whole thing is illusory, right? It's a dreaming state. He began this by saying, it's like a person seeing himself in a dream. Where did we read that? We just read that.
This is in the translation, the last line of the translation.
Yeah, this relationship is just like a dreamer seeing his own body working. Right. So this is like amazing explanation. Okay, so now the crying child of the Lord is given over to the reflection, the material world, to lord it over as karmi, and to give this up in frustration to become one with the Lord. Both these stages are dreaming illusions only. So become one with the Lord, he's talking about Mayavad philosophy. And to become the Lord, that's the karmic, it's becoming a karmi. So becoming a karmi and becoming a Mayavadi, they're two streaming states. Because both of them want to emulate the Lord, want to become the Lord. There is no necessity of tracing out. It says, both these stages are dreaming illusions only. The karmi who wants to own the whole universe and be the Lord, and the Mayavadi who rejects the whole universe and wants to be the Lord by merging into the Lord. Both these stages are dreaming illusions only. There is no necessity of tracing out the history of when the living entity desired this. But the fact is that as soon as he desired it, he was put under the control of Atma Maya by the direction of the Lord. So Atma Maya means the material energy. All right? The external energy of the Lord called Atma Maya. Okay. Therefore, the living entity in his material condition is dreaming falsely that this is mine and this is I. The dream is that the conditioned soul thinks of his material body as I, or falsely thinks that he is the Lord, and that everything in connection with the material body is mine. Thus, only in dream does the misconception of I and mine persist life after life. This continues life after life, as long as the living entity is not purely conscious of his identity as the subordinate part and parcel of the Lord. In his pure consciousness, however, there's no such misconceived dream, and in that pure conscious state, the living entity does not forget that he is never the Lord, but that he is eternally the servitor of the Lord in transcendental love. This is an amazing explanation, and to look at this and understand it, how can we understand something that we are convinced is true, although it's false? How can we understand such a thing that for many years, many lifetimes, we've been convinced that this of this dream as being reality, but actually the whole thing is false. It's a huge thing to accept. Most people never can accept it, you know. So, we'll stop right there. Actually, this is all explained also in a verse in the Srimad Bhagvatam, 7th canto, 5th chapter, 31st verse. Nate vidu swartakatim hi vishnum durasaya ye bahir artamanina andayatander upaniyamanas tepisatantriyam urudam nibadaha. Persons who are strongly entrapped by the consciousness of enjoying material life and who have therefore accepted as their leader or guru a similar blind man attached to external sense objects cannot understand that the goal of life is to return home back to Godhead and engage in the service of Lord Vishnu. As blind men guided by another blind man miss the right path and fall into a ditch, materially attached men led by another materially attached man are bound by the ropes of fruitive labor, which are made of very strong cords, and they continue again and again in materialistic life, suffering the threefold miseries. What a verse this is. This is basically explaining the same thing as we just read. Okay, so we'll stop right there. This is a huge subject. It's not only understanding how the creation takes place, it's not only understanding the unique qualities of Krishna, it's also understanding how we walked away from Krishna into this dreamland. You know, it's just like people go to Disneyland to dream. They're already in a dream, but they want to accentuate the dream, right? So the kids go there and they live in this dream world, right? But there's no difference between that dream world and the dream world they're already living in. They're all based on false conceptions that I am the body and I can be God. You know, I can be a Bezos or a big mogul, a rich man or a powerful man, or I can be a rapist and control somebody. See, all these things are based on control and having absolute power, whether it's on one person or on millions of people. See? So it's a very, very dangerous thing to live in a dream. What happens if you're dreaming and night walking, and in a dream you could walk over a cliff and kill yourself, right? That's what's happening to people living in this dream. Hare Krishna, glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So we'll continue this. There's more to this, and all of this is to understand our relationship with Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yes.
The child has been given the mirror, and similarly
They think they have the moon.
Yeah, and similarly the crying child of the Lord is given over the reflection of material world.
Yes.
So clear example that can be considered.
But do we understand it? That's the thing. Very profound. How we got entrapped, how we're living in this dream world, how we think all these things are most important. You know, the body, the wife, the children, the house, the car, the 401k, the job. We're convinced that this is reality, but actually it's like a dream. So it is real, but it's temporary. So, and it just basically distracts us from what our real purpose is in life. But actually, it explains later on how people like Maharaj Parikshit or Yudhisthira, although they were very rich, although they were big kings, they had a lot of responsibilities, they did not become affected by it because they used every penny that they had in the service of the Lord. It is possible to deal with the material nature and not be entrapped by it. But as long as we understand that it all belongs to Krishna and it should all be used in His service. So this is hard also, to live like that, because some people say, wait a minute, no, I want to enjoy some of this, So as soon as that enjoyment issue comes, independent enjoyment comes, one's dreaming. Haribol. Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Satma Bandhu Mui Savadana Te Bandhu Mui Savadana Mate Janara Prasade Bhai Deva Vatori Ajaye
Jahara Prasade Bhai Bhavaturiya Jai
Krishna Prapti Hoya Hoy Te Krishna Prapti Hoya Hoy Te
Krishna Prapti Hoy Jaha Hoy Te
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitit Goriya
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitete Koriya Aika
Arana Koriya Maneya Sa
Aruna Kori Ho Mone Asa
Arana Koriya Maneya Sa
Aruna Kori Ho Mone Asa
Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Uttamagati
Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Uttamagati
Ye Prasade Pure Sarva Sa
He Prasade Pure Sarva Asa
Ye Prasade Pure Sarva Sa
He Prasade Pure Sarva Asa
Chakshudana Dila Jay Janme Janme Prabhu Se
चक्षुदान दिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से
Divya Gyan De Prakasito
दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशितो
Prema Bhakti Jahate Avidya Vinasajate
प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जते
Prema Bhakti Jahate Avidya Vinasajate
प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जते
Vediga Janara Charito
jahara charito.
Vede gai janara charito.
Vede gai jahara charito.
Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adana Janara Bandhu.
Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adama Janara Bandhu.
Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adana Janara Bandhu.
Guru Karuna Sindhu Adama Janara Bandhu.
Lokanath Lokera Jivana.
Lokanath Lokera Jivana.
Lokanath Lokera Jivana.
Lokanath Lokera Jivana.
Ha Prabhu Kora Doya Dehamuri Padachaya.
Ha Prabhu Koro Daya Deho More Pada Chaya.
Ha Prabhu Kora Doya Dehamuri Padachaya.
Ha Prabhu Koro Daya Deho More Pada Chaya.
Ebe Asa Gusha Jivana.
Ebe Jaz Guso Tribhuvana.
Ebe Asa Gusha Jivana.
Ebe Jaz Guso Tribhuvana.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare
Nitya Gora Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitya Gora Hari Bol.
Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol.
Nitya Gora Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitya Gora Hari Bol.
Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari
Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnavad Paramahansa Parivajik Jasta Tarasatara Shri Srimad Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anatakoti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Harivilas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Samkunda Radha Kunda Girirvardhana Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Mayapur Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Tulasi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Ganga Maya Ki Jai, Jamuna Maya Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhaktavinda Ki Jai, Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotee, all glories to the assembled devotee, all glories to the assembled, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guru, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, Patita Pavan Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutili Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namah. Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Pachari Nirvitsesa Sunyavad Paschatya Deshatarni Nama. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Bhaktivedanta Vasudeva Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The spiritual master
are our only way by which we can attain
Then-
the within themselves. I
bow down to his lotus feet, great awe and reverence. By his grace, conquest, suffering, and attain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish, to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from the lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection and fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him ecstatic perma emanates, by him ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, friend of the poor and Lord and master of the devotees. O Master, be merciful unto us. Give us the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread throughout all the three worlds. We take shelter of your lotus feet. Srila Prabhupada, Patita Pavan, Ki Jai, Gaur Premanandi. Nama Om Vishnupadaya, Krishna Prasthaya, Bhutali Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami. Namaste Saraswati Devi, Guru Managacharya. Nirvisesa Paskatya Desatani, Gaur Premanandi.